Good afternoon. Today is Saturday, January the 5th, 2019, and my name is Khufu Akhu Mentuhotep, and I am co-founder of the Raising Awareness Group, alongside with the other co-founder, Mkuu Mzee, along with Elder Olatunji, Mwamba, and we have a special guest here today, Dr. Tdka Maat Kilimanjaro. And we're going to let Dr. Tdka discuss his background and his career and his team of University UKMT Press and their collective works that they've done over the years. So I'll hand it over.
And before you start, Brother Tdka, just to remind everybody that we're almost going on to the 3-year anniversary of our first interview with you.
Yes, sir.
I think we did it in March of 2016, didn't we?
Yeah, it was about
so this marks our 3rd year of a great relationship with you, brother.
Yes, sir. Same here. Same here. Oh, you want me to go now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all. And I have not sat down in any interviews with anybody other than you all in a place. I mean, I've been on Facebook and a couple of interviews on YouTube, and they were positive, but I usually make certain that I don't go around spending a lot of time talking. I do appreciate you all. I see the good work you've done in the community. I certainly look for groups that do good work to work with. I work with Our Squad. They do good work.
Yep.
I certainly work with many community organizations that do good work, and I will continue to do that, to lend my support and certainly appreciate the work they do. Having said that, I have a long history in life that got me here, but there are a few key moments that put me in a place that allowed me to produce, or at least help produce, teamwork. One of them is in high school, where we started off, FAMU High School. We had a great coach who taught us, what it took to win. He said that you could average 30 or 40 points. Nobody's going to remember you if you're losing.
That's right.
And so, we're not concerned about how many points you score, how much credit you get. We're concerned about, at the end of the year, who's standing on the championship team. And this is a man, Johnny Williams, who in almost a 7-year period won 10 state championships in 3 different sports. I was a part of a few of those in basketball. And so you learn teamwork there. You learn that you're not an individual, you're a group. And to the extent that the individual wins, to the extent that the group wins, the individual wins. But when the group loses, you lose also, no matter what you scored. And so you learn that, and you take that with you. He also had one other element, which was that we should not allow any of our games with people who have cheated us to be close.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for you in the 4th quarter to be close with a team that cheats. In that period in history, we were just coming out of segregation, and the whites would cheat you big time. You come in there, Jim, it's over. And so he taught us that you needed to be up by 20 points going into the 4th quarter with these teams. And that's how I write books. That's how I do my research. Yes. We don't allow anything to be close.
Yes.
So we don't just write a 100-page book. We write a 1,000-page book to explain the entire process. So we don't even allow it to be close. And if people have issues with what we write, we take those issues, we listen, and we make adjustments if we made mistakes. We refine our books over a three edit process, meaning we print the book one time, we get notes and comments from it, we print it a second time, and the third time we close it and put an index in it. So we don't allow the game to be close. We learned that from our coach. So teams win, not individuals. I say it all the time. Individuals win nothing.
Yes.
Teams win. And teams set the standard for the future generation. So I learned that in high school. I moved from high school to college, took that with me there, and then had to make a major decision. Going into my senior year at Florida State, I was preseason All-American and in conference on the all-conference team, and I walked away from it. I saw how they were treating us like animals, like we were dumb, stupid, and I knew I wasn't dumb because I came there as almost a straight A student out of high school, and I was not going to accept that. And so I made a decision that sports was not the place for me, and I walked away from it. And the thing about doing something that positive is that people saw it.
Yes.
And I was given a scholarship to go to Howard. That's how I got to Howard. I wouldn't have had the money to go. And I got in a program that at the time had some great black folk that were transitioning. They were older, they had seen the ropes, and I got a chance to watch them and them tell me what I should not do. And these were like geniuses in their field. One of them was, the top demographer, at least in my view, in the country at that time. And I studied under him and found out in the year and a half I was under him that he had prostate cancer. He died quickly. But before he died, he called me into his house. I was wondering why he's calling me to his house. And he put a lump of money in my hand, so I was worried. I was like, what's going on here? He had found out that my wife was pregnant, and he gave me money saying, you're going to need some money to get through this.
Awesome.
And then the next week, I had a job at the Population Reference Bureau. He set that up.
Wow.
And so he died a week later, almost 2 weeks later.
Wow.
And so I say all this to say, I was put in a good position to learn technical information at Howard. One step that was even more important than those was stumbling into a job at the library. They were moving books from the major library to an annex, and I had a job moving them. And at that time, I was in my second year there in grad school, and in moving those books, I started reading them. And I was doing more reading than I was doing moving. So I've always made the comment that I owe this school, I owe Howard, because I moved whole sections of a library, tens of thousands of books over a 2-year period, and I was doing more reading than moving. Having said that, I got a chance to appreciate different writing styles, different levels of thought. In a graduate program, you don't get that chance. It's quick. You have to do what they tell you to do to get through that process. But there I was working in a library at night. Sometimes I slept in that library. And I learned in the process that you can't ask a person for a source when you're trying to win an argument, because there are thousands of sources. And each one of them have some place on the continuum. You have to ask them for the evidence. I would not have known that if I had not worked in that library. And I would not have appreciated history, because I got a chance to see thousands of books and sum them up, in my view. And I got a chance to really put myself in a position to pass statistics research methods by studying all the statistics and research methods books we had in the library while I was moving. I say all that to say, all of that was by accident, but I took advantage of it. There are 3 things that we have as human beings. We're born, we inherit it. So we inherit things, we have an environment, and then there's our personal response. My personal response was to take advantage of those opportunities and read those books and put myself in a position where a next move, which would have put me out of school if I hadn't gone through that library situation. When I was in grad school, you actually, people begin to notice you, and they find out what your positions are. I'm left wing. And so one of the professors who was over statistics and research methods made it a business to tell the other students, I don't know what he's studying for. He's not getting out of here. So that's a mistake when you tell a person who went to FAMU High School, who's challenged, who you already know a person is going to cheat you. So you already know that. And so, well, I had gotten that 2 years of library work. I was prepared. I sat down knowing what he was going to do to me afterwards. I wrote an 84-page exam. You know, in that day, you had to go into the room with just pad and paper. You didn't get a chance to take the exam home. You had nothing. You didn't have your reference. You had nothing. I got myself in a position to memorize through using these memory tapes and all, subliminal persuasion tapes. I memorized 4 pages of references.
Wow.
Wrote them down when I got in there, and then wrote 80-some pages of answers to 7 questions.
Wow.
But I'm just making the point
Yeah.
that he didn't know that I had gone to a school of training in high school, which was when you know they're going to cheat you, you get up by 20 points, or you give them more than what they can cheat you on.
Exactly.
Well, it's needless to say, he still cheated me. Gave me a 79 failing grade for graduate school. But the other 2, I had a 98 and a 96. And when there's a difference of 15 points, you win that, it goes to the dean.
Okay.
And they put him out. And
why are you
treating this? Why are you cheat? Why are you doing this?
Right.
So I say all that to say, when you're in a situation, that's what shaped me. When you're in a situation where you've learned little things over lifetime, and you keep them, they grow with you as you grow. So having said that, we did the work at Howard. We finished. We got in these universities and learned lessons there. I'll go quickly with that. The lesson I learned most there was that you can't let white folk peer review and edit your work. I tell you what to write. Peer review is nothing but somebody's reading and reviewing and saying, okay, I'll put it in my journal.
Yeah.
And they own almost all the journals. Even the black ones, they own them. And so they're the one telling you what to write and what you can write. And from that's tied to your tenure. That made me make a decision. I had to go into administration instead of staying in the academic area of just teaching statistics, research methods, and researching, because they were going to hold me back because I wasn't writing what they wanted me to write. So you have to really appreciate those things. And then you move to a point where you go through the administration, take over institutional research, which is the core of any university. What I mean by that is the accreditation is the basis for the students being able to get money to go to school. Institutional research makes sure that happens. So I was able to then study universities and see how they work, all of the inner workings of them. That put me in a position to know we need not only our own press, but we need an online university, our own. And so again, I'm still piecing together the parts necessary for that. We transitioned into University of Kemet with a decision to set up a press because we had been keeping journals and having study groups over time. And so when you see some of the books that we've written, they're tied directly to things that we have done, like study teams, survival institutions. We built those institutions. We run charter schools. We actually set up Saturday weekend schools to teach history, knowing that the students are going to get lied to in school. So you got to make sure something is there for them after school or in the weekend. So we've actually done those things, and when you see the books, you see the writing about what we did. K through 12 is really a summary of having run these schools, and then seeing what worked and what didn't, and put it in a book format. Some of the other books evolved out of seeing situations, like Maat evolved out of situations where we saw the children not having moral standards in place and ethical standards. And all of them were brought up under this Islam and Christianity and Judaism, and not having a foundation. And so we put a small pamphlet together and then began to evolve it over time, saying, well, we need more than this. It should not only be for the children, but it should be for the whole family. And so we obviously began to lay out the basis for Maat. So I say all that to say, everything you begin to see that we end up putting in print, we actually were living it. And everything that you begin to see as far as an online university, it would be based on the work that we have summed up that allow us to then set a curriculum in place. One of the mistakes of our African Center movement was that they were actually setting up curriculums and didn't have the books. Still having to piece together stuff, videos, and piece together information that pull from one pamphlet to another, instead of having books that are organically developed in each area, in physics, in chemistry, in biology, in archaeology, in anthropology. in architecture, in engineering. We should have had those books before we started talking about curriculum. We didn't do that. And I saw that when we're running these schools, that they're pasting together these lesson plans from stuff they're pulling off the online, internet and stuff. Because we don't have those books set up like the Europeans. They have their books in each area, with Greece starting it. And Greece started nothing. Kemet started it.
Exactly.
And we have to write our books that way. That's why I told you I don't get in these petty arguments with people. Because what happens is what we're learning should have been put in place that way instead of messing around with these debates and stuff. So let's say closing. We move toward formally organizing ourselves as a team of researchers and publishers in the last 6 years. We were already doing the study groups. We were already running the schools. We were already meeting and organizing around survival activities in our community. We only began to put that on paper about 5 or 6 years ago, and then moved and transitioned quickly to the first book we wrote, which was the Moral Foundation book. And then from there, we organized the way in which we set up teams. I made a comment earlier, this is a quick one, about how important it is to choose your people well, to make certain that you choose your team well. And we were talking about rowers, people who ride, and then people who are sitting in the boat drilling holes. So you're going to have people who row. Those are the ones you go with. That's your core. Then you're going to have some people who are riding on the boat complaining, who are just riding. And you're going to have to make a decision about how you deal with them in a quick way. You know, complainers ultimately end up being drillers if they're not dealt with properly.
Right.
You see. And so people drilling in a boat, you know what happens to a boat when you drill holes in it. It sinks. And everybody on that team and in that boat sinks with it. So there are 3 types of people that we deal with in individuals and organizations. And this is what I'm looking at when I see them. There are folk that are with you, you know, heart to heart. They know what you're doing is right, is just, and they're with you. Then there are people who are not with you, but they are with what you say. They are for what you say. Those are another type of people in the middle. I'll speak to them in a second. And then there are people who are not even with you, or they're not with what you say, but they're against what you are against. You see, and that's the third group. And what happens is these 3 groups, you run into them, are individuals or organizations, and you don't know how to figure out which one is in each group, because the last 2 groups are going to leave. The last 2 are gone.
They're going to go.
As soon as the second one, as soon as something comes up, the ones who say they're for what you are for, as soon as they find something else to be for, they're going to leave what you're doing. You see, they're not for you. They're for what you were for. Someone else comes up with a better story or something like that, they're gone. The other group is quicker to go because they're only there to fight on your side because you're against a common enemy. These are white folk too. These are most of our black folk. They're fighting a common enemy, racism, white supremacy. But as soon as they get what they want out of that situation, they're gone. And so this is what happens to most of our black unity organizations, because that's what it's set up on. And you don't have many of them at core are for something principle and have purpose, you know, have their morals and ethics in order. So I said that, and it's important when you're dealing with teams. The last thing is, in that, you got to have purpose over profit, you see. Purpose is more than thinking about getting some money out of it. None of these books would be in place if we worried about somebody paying us to write them, or paying us to research them, or paying us or giving us a job or something like that. We knew that certain things had to be done, and somebody had to do it. And if you had prepared yourself to do it, you need to do it. And I'll tell you about that in a second. And then the other one is, instead of building around people, you build around processes. You know, you actually understand your moment in history, what you can contribute, and we are elders and a young person here. We know what we can do at a certain stage in our lives. And so we're building around a process. And people come and go. But the process is the key.
Right.
And the last one is we have to sometimes get comfortable having empty chairs. And what I mean by that is instead of just getting with people in these teams to have numbers, you have to go with quality.
Quality over quantity.
You have to always go with quality because that's what ends up in your production, quality over quantity. You know, I've seen situations where you have full groupings of people and they're doing nothing. They're in that boat just talking and riding, and one or two people are rowing that whole boat. We don't need that. We need everybody in the boat rowing who have quality. We don't need people in the boat talking. And certainly when you see somebody in a boat drilling holes, you got to get them out of there. Yeah. So closing, we have a team. Obviously, you know Yara, Anev, you know Tdka Kilimanjaro, you know some of you knew of Elder Haru, he passed. But some of you all didn't know that T is aboard. She was one of us too. You know, you know, sometimes you can't say things publicly. There are about 2 or 3 other people who were with us too. But she passed. And I said in the past that this book that we just did would not have gotten done if I had not met her. And I'll tell you why, just quickly. This woman had 5 children. She met us at a time when she was looking for purpose, obviously. And she contacted me. She saw some things on Facebook. She had 5 children. She got Ma'at. She said she read Ma'at, and there was something in there that moved her. And the next thing you know, she had gotten rid of, she had a Porsche at the time. She sold that car, got herself organized, got her children set up in preparation to move to Nigeria. Had gotten a business, set a business up, asked me to help her with a business plan. She got that done. Just to see a person taking charge of her life and setting this standard of, I don't know if I'll have tomorrow, so I'm going to get it done today. That's what put me in a position to close this off, because she was a young person. She was only 39. And she died of a heart attack. Wow. And so I say all that to say, it hit home to me that here's a person doing the right thing, and her life was snatched just like that. And here I was, drifting, wasting what I had gone through with the 2 or 3 things I told you. The coach I had that told us never let games be close, so never let situations be close. And number 2, he told us that teams win, individuals don't win anything. Nobody remembers losers. And so coming out of that, having an opportunity to work in a library for 2 years that was given me, basically reading books, because I didn't stack too many. I didn't move too many. I was reading them, and I'm going to pay them when I get a chance to. But I say all that to say, I had an accidental situation that built me into the person I am now. And I was wasting it. Talking about I got to pay this bill or do that, putting it off. I would have never got that book done in my time. I'm in my late 50s. I wouldn't have never done it. It's too hard. It wasn't hard in the sense that technical information in my head is hard. It's hard to explain it. You see, multiple regression, factor analysis, path analysis, discriminant analysis, ANOVA. These are the highest levels of statistics that are taught in the world. I taught those for 20 years. So that's not a problem to me. But explaining that to somebody who hasn't gone through that,
to the lay person,
it's difficult to do. Right. And that's why I didn't want to venture into Tdka, because I knew it would be difficult to break it down. And so closing, all of that to say that you'll see that nothing would have gotten done if I didn't have a humble spirit to deal with a woman who had 5 children, no education as far as the white people's technical education, but she had a heart. You know, she was a fighter. And so you actually look at the person's heart and see, okay, this person is doing the right thing, and look at me. I'm wasting journals. I'm wasting time. And so I made a decision to make a turn then. You met me about 6 or 7 months ago. You saw it, the paper on the table. I had, within 4 months, typed all of that.
You talking about the card? You talking about
the note, the stuff on the table. You saw it.
Yeah,
it wasn't near. It wasn't near a book.
It wasn't near a book.
It wasn't near a book.
You're right about that.
But I worked with these people's job 8 hours, got off, didn't cheat them, took my 5 hours after work, did my work, and worked on the weekend. That's how we got that done in less than 11 months. So I say all that to say, when you meet people in your life, don't judge a book by a cover. Respect that. If I had judged her by her cover, riding around in a Porsche, I'm thinking wasting time, living a certain way, and not appreciating she was in motion. And all she needed was a path to get on. And that's all many of us need, is a path to get on. And so that is why we put these books together the way we did. I hope that's a good sketch for you.
Oh, absolutely.
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 Wow, that was, we appreciate that. We appreciate that story. And, you know, it's good that you put that out there so people understand that it takes hard work and dedication and consistency. And we appreciate you for putting these works out. And these works are going to live forever. And I'm very appreciative that one day my daughter will read these works and be able to look back at this footage, see all of us sitting around and discussing these works, which, in my opinion, is very paramount. I don't see really no one that's doing the level of work that you are producing and your team is producing. So, within saying that, can we get a brief synopsis of KA² philosophy?
Wow.
I that word brief. He did say
we got some questions. We want people to pick up the book,
get an idea,
to read the book, to read it again,
yeah,
and process the information. So this is why I say a brief synopsis.
Yeah,
and I know that's
and like y'all said, it ain't no lightweight.
Yeah, this is our first 6x9. We've done 5x8s, but we haven't done a 6x9. If it were a 5x8, it would have been 1,500 pages. So the people told us we can't bind that. So you go 6x9. We went to a 6x9, which is bigger format, allows us to spread the information out. But we had to change the fonts too because it was a big book. Having said that, we made a decision not only to cover some issues around history, and so we put some color pictures in there for our people who are messing around with Kemet. Maybe messing around with that. We showed you the Africanness of Kemet, and obviously anyone who would seen it would know that if you got an upper and lower Kemet, and the upper part, which is the South, won and set up the whole nation, you would know that the people who won from the South were black people.
Right.
You would know that, and you would know they set it up, and you would have your evidence in. The issue should have been closed when Bruce Williams came up with those incense burners, which showed the whole essence of Kemet, the facade, the helmet, and everything in Nubia.
Right.
It's down there. So they brought it up. All these debates would have been over, but we're still messing around. And so I had to spend some time, correcting those. It would have been a 1,000-page book instead of 1,500 if I didn't have to put the history in there. The whole thing about philosophy is most people confuse it with opinion. It's not.
It's not opinion.
It's summarized theory. And what I mean by that, theories in every area. And you actually begin to get a flow of history over time summed up as logic. That's philosophy. That's core philosophy. A flow of history summed up as logic. And then you end up with that for principles from that. You end up with policies. You end up with procedures. You end up with programs out of that. So clearly, most people get confused thinking somebody's opinions are philosophies.
Right.
It's not the same thing. And so we had to begin to establish how to go about explaining that. And so I'll say this to you. I obviously acknowledged all of you all in the acknowledgement, so you can look deeply in there. And so if folks start chasing after you because you were near me, you know, that don't blame me. But you know, there's a dedication, obviously, to T for actually making sure this happened, because she set such an example with her life. The woman knew she was dying. I met her a month before she died. I didn't know.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, I met a month. I went there, and she knew.
Oh, okay.
She knew. She didn't tell me though, but she knew.
Right. Okay.
I saw she was frail. And so it's just such a spark in me to appreciate that the person was doing all this stuff knowing that the end might be near. And I'm around here wasting time. So I say all that to say, the acknowledgement walks you through how I got to where I got to with this. Methodically tells you what my thinking was to get us this point. It's been a 33-year process. I started it when I first got in grad school. I started thinking about a simple question, which was, you know, what are the revolutionary philosophies that organize theory and then organize action? So you start with a philosophy, you end up with the theoretical actions that take place in each area, then you end up with strategies, and then you end up with tactics. It doesn't go the other way around. You don't start off with a tactic, you don't start off with strategy, you start off before all of those with a philosophy. Then you get your theories lined up in each area, and then you end up with your strategies to carry those theories out. And then you end up the specific day-to-day tactics that you carry out to make sure the strategies work. Most people get all of that confused. And so if we don't have our philosophies in place properly, we're not going to end up with the theories in each area worked out properly and aligned. And then we're not going to end up with our strategies reflecting what our philosophy was. And then, you know, the day-to-day tactics don't work. You know, so you're talking about a tactic of nonviolence. If your philosophy was clear, you would never had ended up with that. Letting people beat you in the head and put water hoses and throw dogs on you. You never would have ended up there. Because you know people can't respect you when you let people kick you around. You let somebody rape your wife in front of you, how are they going to respect you? You see? So your philosophy had to be worked out first. And then the theories in each area. And then the strategy of how you're going to deal with these people. And then the tactics. You would have never ended up with nonviolence and letting people beat the hell out of you. You would never end up. So I try to work that out in people's mind, that we never really laid out how things should go. So no, we laid a book out. It took 33 years. It has 10 parts to it. It has 2 sections. The first section deals with matter and spirit. We had to work those things out. And then the second section deals with the actual method, the application of the method, which is what most people will go to immediately. It's around page 600. It's about 400 pages of applied method. So if you want to skip over all the summary of history that leads to logic, which I'm trying to basically put people on the track to think properly, you go right to the section 2, which is Tahuti. Section 1 is named after Sashat, which is science. And then Tahuti, obviously, intellect and science. So we have the woman first and then the man in the second section. Each part builds from this summary of history down to the actual application. So I'll go quickly with the parts. Matter, spirit, universe, earth, life, all the way down to Nile Valley region of Africa. That's part 2. Jed, which is the part 3, which is the anatomy of African civilization. You have to break down the core civilization, each part. It's like a body, has a heart, has a brain. You know, you have lungs to breathe. You have your arms, muscles. You have skeleton. You have to break those things down. Societies are built the same way. That's how you know they are different from others. You know that we're different in building our societies than Europeans and Arabs. You know that because you're able to take it apart. And we've done that. And so we move from that to the actual anatomy of the society to the system of ideas, the cosmology and the philosophy. That's how we transition into that. Because you don't start off writing, you start off doing. And then you move from doing while thinking to making the decision. I've got to find a way to save this.
Right.
Yeah, I've got to find a way to save this.
Yeah.
Then you get to writing.
Right.
And the first people who did that are people in Kemet.
Right.
In Africa. I don't say Kemet because it was already being done earlier, closer to now, to the center. So having said that, people get that confused. Having done that, we move from transmission, translation, transference of African Kemet's thought matter. That's the invasion. That's the Europeans. That's the Arabs. That's the Syrians. That's the Persians coming in there. And only the Europeans figured out, shoot, this stuff is over. We can live off them, but we also can translate that stuff and take it back home. And that's what they did. They set up, who would set up a library in somebody else's country and they don't even have it in their own?
Right.
The greatest library in the world is in Roque. They call it Alexandria, which is a base for them collecting our stuff and translating it.
Right.
So again, they were smart enough to do that. But it took from us. And I tried to explain to you what happened there. Someone takes your thought matter. So like you knew how to build pyramids, you know how to build roads, you know how to build temples and all that. They take it, write it up, and then keep you from going to school. Then 50 years later, you can't do any of that, but they're doing it in their place. That's what they did. They took all of that thought matter out of Kemet. It ended up, after the Greeks and others got invaded by the Arabs ended up with it. So when you hear these stupid discussions about Arabs bringing math and everything to someone, they're using someone else's thought matter, information.
Right. They didn't originate.
They didn't originate it.
Right. Exactly.
It's like you see these cars built. The Japanese didn't originate building cars. The whites were doing that. And so the whites did it, but the Japanese now are doing it better than them. The Asians are doing it better. Same thing with skyscrapers. The whites originated that. I'm not saying Kemet originated skyscrapers, but I'm saying in this age, within the last 100 and some years. And they took that knowledge to Asia. And now the Asians are beginning to do it much better than they can do it. So I say all that to say Kemet was at the core of all of this. And these people took that thought matter, translated it, transferred it to their culture, and left us imperially destroyed. And so I had to explain that process so we get that worked out in people's head. And once you get past that, you end up with the inversion, what we call inversion, collection, redemption, renewal of African thought. That's what I'm doing. That's what we're doing. We collect it. We extract the rational kernel. We stop looking to them for answers. We look right to Kemet. This is what we did with Maat. We get our own source of information from our own source. I made a comment before on Facebook explaining why are we wasting time talking about we built Islam and we built Christianity and we built Judaism.
Right.
It's stupid. If you did, why not go back to the source material that you did?
Right.
It will.
The original.
Go to the original, and then you extract the things that you can use out of it. Why are we crawling around with their stuff?
Right.
And so I'm talking about the African Center community.
Right.
Many of them are still crawling around with their stuff.
Right.
So when you have the communities claiming to be African Center and still crawling around with stuff that the Europeans and the invading Arabs and Jews and everything else have, it's something wrong with you. And you have to, deal with yourself and admit that and correct that. And we haven't done that. And so until we can get that part in our young people, that's who I'm focused on, who see that they have the ability to go directly to their own sources and extract the information necessary to rebuild their own civilization, then we're not going to be able to go anywhere. Right. So I spent a whole part 6, dealing with that. It's called Kepler. And then we move right into section 2. And I'm closing. It's 4 parts in that one. Ka, Tdka, Siba, and Sa. And each one of them moves you from the extraction of opposites, which was at the core of Kemet's belief system, cosmology. They call Ka, the whites call it spirit. They have a lot of different words, double, life force, but they're not clear on it, you see. And so when they're not clear and you look into their dictionaries and their grammar books and all for your answer, then you may not be clear either.
Right.
You have to spend more and more time trying to piece together what clearly we have put together from our own thinking. We have to do that. And so I'm saying that is not complete yet in life. That's something that the young people will have to continue to do, but I certainly open the discussion. We end up from car philosophy to car method. That's part 7. Then applied procedural methods, which is core for persons who want to carry out the work. And then the characteristics and conditions of preparations. You have to prepare SIBA, young people, older people, to use this craft. It's like when I'm teaching regression analysis. Not only will I teach them what it means, not only will I give them the statistical symbols and what they mean, and then the process and procedures of carrying out the computations, but I also have to explain to them, once you got the number, the results, what does it mean? The same thing has to happen with this philosophy transform into a method. You have to be able to know what it means. See, you have to be able to know when you're applying it to a society that the society is in motion.
Right.
Just like you and me. I'm still the same person that I was when I was born at 1 year old, but I'm older. I'm in motion.
Right.
You see, I'm at the end of the road now. I'm not at the beginning.
Right.
Societies are the same. They have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Kim had understood all of this. A cycle of life, but it's more a spiral. It transitions into something else higher.
Something else.
Yeah. And so we have to actually understand that process. And so that is why I spent all these years trying to master KA as a system of method as opposed to just a philosophy. Philosophy, you can shape things in general. You can discuss them in general, just like I used an analogy. But when you come to a method, you have to be able to apply it to the situation, that whatever that situation is. And that's what I'm saying I'm trying to really create engineers, philosophical engineers that go out and see situations, understand what the opposites are in them, which direction the thing is going, what stage of development it is, and how it is evolving, developing, and where it will go. So you have to know the past in order to know the present, and you have to know, in order to know the future, you have to know the present. And so you have to have those things in order to carry that kind of research out. So yes, that's a very short summary of what I would say.
You did pretty good. You did pretty good for 35 years of history.
Yeah. So that's how we got there.
Okay, so right now we didn't put together some questions. We wasn't sure if you cover some of these questions in your book or not, but I'll ask you 2 questions, and then I'll allow Olatunji to ask you some questions, and Mkuu. So I'll start off first. First question, which is, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but we'll ask you directly. How important is philosophy in relation to the psychology of African people?
Well, that's central. We had a great warrior psychologist just passed, Dr. Kavon, down in Tallahassee. Just a great guy. Really laid the foundation in the area of African-centered thought and psychology. But the whole psychology of a population is reflective of the culture and the environment they develop in. And so that is why you have a certain peaceful quality to black folk in general before we ran into these invaders. And we have not, over the years, centuries, moved quickly enough to adjust that because our environment changed and we haven't culturally adjusted to it. Philosophy will help you get there because what it means is some elder or elders are summing up what you should have seen.
Right.
I think
what you haven't seen.
What you haven't seen and what you should have seen. Like
what you don't know yet.
Some of the most advanced young people that I have met have been people raised by their grandparents.
There you go.
And there's a reason for that.
There you go.
Because the grandparents, if they are, have been alert in their lives and have integrity, really have wisdom. They've summed up a lot of stuff. And so they're giving it going on 70 or 80 to a child that's 10 or
Yeah.
11. And that child, it then can understand how the end of the road looks,
Right.
not
At the
just how the beginning.
Right, right.
You see, I was explaining to you all the time, I see all these arguments going, and they don't recognize that I've been through this stuff and made decisions that I'm not going to waste time.
Yeah.
That's how we're able to get these books done.
Yeah.
Because we made a decision not to waste time. But older people with wisdom are great for young people. And the whole thing about philosophy, it is a wisdom-based study. It is a summary study. You know, it's summing up the work that's in physics. It's summing up the work that's in chemistry. It's summing up the work that's in biology. It's summing up the work that's in history. It's a summary system. And it allows you then to adapt your understanding of what your psychology is into something that will, a tool that will allow you to win. You see, psychology is tied directly to cultural adaptation to an environment, a population psychology. If it's a environment where they didn't have to fight, if it's an environment that was plentiful, things were a basis for organizing things. They had a chance to figure out things without people enslaving them or attacking them like Emmett. They did. They reached the highest levels in the physics, chemistry, the adaptation to architecture, and then construction engineering. They didn't have people invading and attacking.
Right.
But as soon as that happened, they had to stop doing the pyramid building
Right.
and start building underground. You see, that's an adaptation.
Yeah.
And that's an adaptation to their psychology, but it was incremental. It was not fast enough.
Mhm.
You see? And when it's not fast enough and you've got people pouring in with a different psychology, a different cultural bent, and you're trying to amalgamate those people, acculturate those people, assimilate them,
Tough job.
it's a tough job. And at some point, it reaches critical mass, and the population from the outside, it becomes the dominant population. This is Ka in action. Those two meet, the outside at some point overtakes the inside. And that's what took place. And if you didn't have your philosophy in order to realign that, you're going to lose that, even if you had to leave. And that's what happened. We scattered and exploded, and our philosophies were not written down in place, and we didn't know how to adjust to that. So I say all that to say, having a pure and organized summary of a philosophical approach to things allows you to adjust your psychology to a situation quicker. And my point about older people teaching young people is a good one, especially if the young people have open hearts, can listen, and the older people whose wisdom have integrity when they're teaching.
Very good.
Wow. This is a very profound answer. So, second question is philosophy subject to change and transformation in African cultures, or is it consistent?
Well, again, you're talking about regions. You know, you have to speak about the regions of different African cultures. Each culture is an adaptation to the environment it is in. There's an adjustment to it. Even the language is our adjustment to the environment that the population is in. And so, as I said before, if we're talking about modern forms, if it's written down, if it's taught, if it's explained, you actually do have the opportunity to have different strands of philosophy that bring adjustments to, you know, the core philosophy that it has. And what I mean by that is, how did I arrive at just the aspect of Kemet's cosmology that deals with only opposites and birth, death, and rebirth? Why was that so important? Well, it was important to me because I was concerned about, you know, how do we get out from under these people? You know, is there an opportunity? And the only opportunity that people who have been brought here enslaved to build somebody else's civilization comes when that civilization, that society is running its course. Then you have an opportunity. But while you're in here and they need you working, they're going to keep you here.
Right.
But when they don't need you anymore, then you got something else to work with. What are you going to do? And that's why we have to prepare ourselves with philosophy to understand that everything born dies. The issue is, where is it at?
Right.
And then what can you do to rebirth yourself in something else? And you know, as elders, we rebirth ourselves and our children and young people after us.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, your point was, does it change? Yes, it adjusts. And I think this is going to adjust some things in people's thinking.
Yeah.
Because many people thought it was off limit. You see, Ka are this double, these opposites, this doctrine of opposites. In what the Europeans took it in, they called it dialectic. And they called it initially just debating. It wasn't dialectic for everything, it was just for debate.
Sure.
You see. And so it's only within the 18th and 19th century when Hegel and Marx and all of those got their hands on this stuff, did they try to make it mean the whole thing. But the Chinese were already doing it. Yin yang. Indians were doing it. It was being done in the Aztec Empire. So it's not something that's tied directly to one population. So we're calling it Ka, but my point is we're able to use this definition for it in general. But it laid the foundation for me to think about, okay, well, I can handle this aspect of our thinking. There are numerous other philosophical aspects that other people should handle. Mine is more along with the scientific materialist realm. You see, I'm dealing with matter. I'm dealing with science in physics, chemistry, biology, sociology, criminology, economics, etc. I'm dealing with the core sciences in those areas to come up with my summary of that philosophy. I'm not dealing with the mystical aspect, which people can deal with. I'm not doing that because that would force me to be idealist, which will force me to make up things.
Right.
You see, from my head.
That makes sense.
And I didn't do that.
That makes sense.
So other people, I'm not shining negativity on them. I'm saying they could do that. They should do their books with that.
Right.
But I went down the route that I could go down that has some certainty attached to it.
So, when we look at philosophy, is it possible to know anything fully?
No. Absolute perfection in knowledge is impossible because the fragments of time and logic over time are transitional and they change. There's nothing that's pure from 10 seconds ago from what I just said. You're not able to sum up all of that. Right. You see, it's moved and it's gone. That's the importance of time. And this is what as I said earlier about just seeing people pass. I've lost about 6 people in the last, and Africanus is one of them, in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And these are good people.
Yeah.
But you lose those fragments. You may have books on them, you have pieces of things they left with you, people's stories and all, but you never get the whole picture. Right. So there's no way to have a whole picture of anything. You can get close on some areas. You can have some certainty in physics. You can have some certainty. And when I say certainty, I'm not saying absolute certainty. I'm saying that changes because when the physical conditions with the earth and the sun change, all the physical laws change too.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't have absolute certainty. It is all fluid. Yeah, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. What is the philosophy in relation to life beyond, in its relation to Ka?
Well, I think if you're asking me, do things transition from one state of matter to another, which means matter and spirit, I'm saying yes. I'm saying it takes a different form. I'm saying we don't have all the answers to that. I'm saying the answers we do have leads us to know from what they actually argue in physics, which no energy is ever lost or created. It's only transformed.
Right. It changes form.
And so the things that we are change form. Spirit form, change form. The energy that powers us up to get up in the morning. That's just a transition to another form. And so I say all that to say nothing really dies. It just passes into another form. We can use the word die, but the energy passes into another form, if that's what you're asking me. And Ka is tied directly to that because it is the system of birth, death, and rebirth. This double life, this Ba, this Ka, this doubleness, this double that lays the foundation for you to recognize that these opposites are in use everywhere. And so, what you see and then what you don't see, that's a unity. Yeah. What you understand and what you don't understand, that's a unity. Mm-hmm. The possibilities and the reality, those are unities. Mm-hmm. And so again, I would say clearly those transitions do take place in the world that we see and the world that we don't see, if that's what you're asking me.
Okay. One of the things that we do a lot of times is I say we as a community, not just anybody in particular. We have a tendency to preach to the choir. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like we're throwing information out there, but we're talking to people that already kind of know this information already. We forget that there are people who are just coming into the information, the knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so, always make sure that, and I know these two brothers and yourself is included, you guys always make sure you put the information out there, even though it may seem old to others. Mm-hmm. And then people have a tendency to scroll right on by, and that's their right. But we have a responsibility to make sure that we teach and transmit the information, no matter how old, no matter how new, no matter how fresh, to everybody. Mm-hmm. So we have to remember that as teachers, even the old information is valuable.
Yes.
Okay. So that brings me to my point, and I'm like, I have my own something in my mind right now about Ka. Mm-hmm. The invading hordes that came into Kemet.
Yes.
They came in, raped us, like vampires, sucked us dry.
Yes.
Took our information, used it for themselves.
Yes.
They didn't quite understand what this Ka thing was anyway. So, without getting mythical about it, people have to understand, because we might have new people listening to this. We understand that Ka in Kemet was the divine spirit. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you hear us say the Netcharu. Mm-hmm. Our Ba mm-hmm. can be included in that divine spirit. Mm-hmm. We all have a connection to the Netcharu, that mm-hmm. divine spirit. We have a Ka. Everybody has a Ka. Mm-hmm. So we have a responsibility to improve ourselves mm-hmm. through the principle of Ma'at. Mm-hmm. As a result, once we do that, as we improve on ourselves and we enlighten our Ba, our soul, our personal that original self that mm-hmm. makes us us, mm-hmm. then the Kat, which is the body, becomes a temple. Mm-hmm. You hear people say all the time that you are your temple, you are what you eat, and that is very true. But it's also what you put in your head Absolutely. And what it puts in your mind.
Absolutely.
That's when your body, your Kat, becomes mm-hmm. the temple.
Yeah.
You have to be an enlightened Ba in order for you to be a temple. Once you consider yourself worthy to be part of that Netcharu, of that divine spirit, then now your systems come into place. Your methodologies come into place. You have to have a pure spirit to understand what these systems are. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that we can't get militarized and get our arms and get our defense tools and weapons and things like that. That doesn't stop us from doing that. But will you agree that Ka starts with being enlightened with oneself, and as a result, enlightening as the community goes, as the individual goes, the community goes? And just give me your take on that real quick. On
I think a better example would be Maat. Most persons who had written about it before we started writing left it up in the air. They did not appreciate that this was behavioral.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, you're judged on what you do here,
Right.
how you treat people.
Mm-hmm.
Did you leave a ship, a boat for them? Did you leave some food? Did you take care of that child that didn't have a home? That's what they're talking about.
Right.
Did you pay these people who you owed?
Mm-hmm.
Did you took that lamb? Did you give it back?
Mm-hmm.
Did you treat that older person well?
Mm-hmm.
You go through all these confessions of innocence, and you see us talking about behavior.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you respect your wife, your mother, your parents
Right.
in their age? So the ethical and moral foundation to Ma'at is the key to it. That's the balance.
There you go.
It's what you did.
Mhm.
And the same thing with this car, because most people won't get this. I'll say this.
Mhm.
We may have wasted a great opportunity after these white people ran us in the ground, because that should have speeded up our psychology of toughness.
There you go.
And we should be facing them eye to eye, like the Chinese face them.
Right now. Yeah.
You see, when they met us off, I'm just trying to break this down quickly. They met us because our environment was an environment that allowed us to be softened. Things were there for us. You could pick it off the tree.
Right.
Nature's right there. Conditions, we didn't have to fight initially. Look at Kim. It had the major mountains in one place, desert on the other side, just terrain that was difficult to have groups of people coming in there invading.
Right.
But as these populations developed their technologies and their capacity to find ways and stuff, they were able to circumvent that.
Right.
And Kemet could not adjust quickly enough militarily. And that's why they lost, because they would have had those fort walls up and done everything they could to crush these people in there, but they couldn't adjust.
Right.
Well, as I explained before about psychology being tied directly to culture, and then culture being tied directly to environment, the philosophy that we're bringing forth says in substance that these two opposites met. They had something that allowed them to crush us. Here we are in this stomach right now.
Right.
If we were doing right by ourselves, we would have gotten them damn schools in every area of science and took their history and put it in the trash can, except for passing exams, and taught our own kids on the weekend and after school. We would have been doing that. Yeah. Their accurate history. You knew they were lying, so why waste time arguing with them about lying?
Right.
You knew they were lying, and they knew they were lying.
Right.
They know.
Right.
They're sitting there with the stuff.
Right.
They're the one telling you, oh, that means Kent with the black people. That's the word mean that. Those are black people. They knew. They're scratching their head. Why in the hell these black people build these characters? These are black people. So they had it first.
Right.
But we didn't. So these two opposites are together. The white people system is coming undone. And I try to explain to people that you can't just lock a system as if it's the same one it was 100 years ago or 50 years ago. It's coming undone not because of bad people. It's coming undone because they have a system of competition that's tied directly to profit that's based on production now with robots.
Yeah.
And you cannot produce toothpaste or cars cheaper than them with human beings with robots.
That's right.
The robots are going to have more productivity. They're going to produce 100 cars for every one car that the human being produces. They see that. And so how are you going to sell it?
Right.
Your whole system is based on you getting a wage and then buying something with that wage. When you don't have a job, how are you going to get a wage?
Exactly.
So that's coming undone.
Right.
That has nothing to do with us.
Right.
And it ain't nothing to do with bad people. That's just the system.
Right.
Now, how do we benefit from that?
How do we take advantage?
How do we take advantage of it? And that's what our thinkers have not loosened their head to get to.
Exactly.
KA puts you in a position to see that and the mistake you made. So the point I'm trying to make is it's an applied area of life. So you do have to know in order to do. Same thing with Ma'at. You have to know in order to do. You're not born good or bad. You're born with both. And when you say good or bad, I mean your spirit.
Right.
You have both.
Right.
And so when I made the comment that you have what you inherited, some of it, sometimes you have birth defects, you inherited that. You can't do anything about that. You're in an environment. I was born in a poor environment. My mother was an alcoholic my whole high school whole life in high school. She fought her way through it and cleaned her life up later, but my whole first 19 years were hell. That was my environment. I had that coach and the environment of winning that taught me things, but I say all that to say, I didn't allow my environment to crush me.
No.
My personal response, which is what we're talking about, Ma'at Ka, was to face that situation and go through it. We needed to face these whites and go through them. And in most cases, we didn't. The 1960s showed us that.
Right.
We should not have let them beat us that way and run over us that way and put dogs on us that way because they think they should be able to do that now.
Right.
And that's when you see the police killing us in the street. They think that it's okay to do that. You see, because we allow them to think that it's okay to treat us any kind of way. They don't do that to those Arabs around here. They know they'll put a bomb, they'll do something.
Right.
But we let people treat us a certain way. That's Ka. So you have the opposites coming together.
Right.
And then the one that has its substance, we have to be who we are in this life. And we haven't been that. You see, we've laid down in many instances. And I say all that clearly about this work. We weren't getting financed. We worked these jobs and paid for this stuff. And if you all hadn't helped us and a few other people hadn't helped us, none of it would have gotten done.
Yeah.
You see, so people have a choice.
Right.
You see, they make a decision. I'm going to say this. I got to say this too. I was one little piece tied to this. Ka is important to appreciate. Even the negative opposite that meets a positive, you can get something out of that.
Absolutely.
You see, we can get something out of having self-respect in difficult situations. Children see us standing tall. They see us fighting back, giving our best. And they build in the next generation from that. You see, so you hadn't lost if you face something eye to eye.
Right.
And so when we think of Malcolm X, we don't think of a guy running.
No.
He could have gone to Nigeria and they had told him, come on here, stay here. He stood up. He knew what was coming. He didn't run. But he set an example that allowed us to come through and know that we have to have that kind of heart and sustenance too. Same thing with Harriet Tubman. So no, it's lived. Ka is lived. Even in a negative, there's a positive that you can pull out of it.
Absolutely.
And we haven't done good enough with that, sir. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
We have not done good enough with that.
Yeah.
The negative situations we've been in, we should have learned more from them. You see, and now we're trying to get our young people to face negative situations, even the crack situation. We should have learned very clearly, okay, this stuff is killing us. We shouldn't be doing this because this is what it does to us. And so we're going to make certain we don't do that kind of stuff again.
Right.
You see, we should learn that because we went through it. But sometimes you don't really get that learning. So now we get with these designer drugs are coming into our communities, and we're falling for that one again too.
Right.
But we have problem with integrity and ego out of control throughout all the community.
Yes.
It's not centered on any one
No, it's not.
or group of people. We're talking about the community as a whole, and your example there, which is the living example.
Living example.
You live that. You're still living that. It lets you know that it goes across the spectrum.
Yeah,
Right.
comment though, you expect better.
Right.
You know, so young people don't know any better in many respects in some areas because they haven't put themselves in a position to produce that kind of work. They haven't had the time to do it because it takes time to get in a position to do this.
Right.
And so anyone who knows, and they're older, who knows what it
Right.
took to do this,
Right.
to do just one of them,
Right.
you know, just to do mine,
Right.
our African time, just to do one of them,
Right.
they would know what it took to do it. And they would not treat us in that manner, but
Exactly.
they did. So
Yeah.
I say all that to say I have an appreciation for action.
Yeah.
And Ka tells me not to run from anything. It's just to face it. Okay, what can we get out of it? I
Right.
see this coming.
Right.
I see the situation
Right.
coming. How can we use it?
I have a feeling you knew kind of reaction you was going to get anyway, but you went on it.
Yeah, I did.
You did it
I
anyway.
did, and that's why
That way there was
we
no
kept
excuses.
going.
Once you did that, there was no excuses.
That's right. We gave it to him. We
Yeah.
moved on, and didn't cry over it at all.
I believe you answered this question already, but is philosophy based on one's perception? I think you did answer this
Yeah.
question, but maybe you can kind of take the question and take it and twist it a little bit. Is philosophy based on one's perception or is it an overall agreed reflection of your surrounding environment and nature?
Well, it's the second one. It's not one perception.
Okay.
Well, the one perception has to be a summary of all the others. So what I would say is it is a reflection of surrounding environment and nature, because from each area of nature, you're talking about physics, chemistry, biology, all spirituality, religion, all of this, you can actually form summary theories from that. Theory is nothing but summarized practice. I mean, most people get it all confused, but it ends up being a formula or something like numbers and all, and they confuse it. It's summarizing practice. See, when you see a statistical formula or a technique that you're being utilized, that's summarizing that each symbol is tied to an action or activity that you have to carry out for man.
Right.
And most people get that confused, thinking, okay, it's something else. No, it's an activity summed up in a symbol.
Right.
And if you get that, you'll be able to appreciate the whole thing about philosophy, which is really summing up in a few words, logic, a whole lot of stuff. And so when I'm coming at the table with a lot of people, I'm coming with those tens of thousands of books I read at Howard. I was just, stacking books, reading books. That's what I'm coming to the table with, which is philosophy summed up into logic. And that's what you're saying. So it is my meeting you.
Yes.
It's everywhere I go, I end up with notes. That night, I sit down and go over and end up with what I got from it. I keep journals. That's how I remember. That's how I know what I can add to that discussion in that book that I got from you. So really, it is a source meeting you and all of you all. I end up with the stuff in the book. Because it is a summary. Philosophy is a summary of the environments that you've been in, the nature that you've met and dealt with. And even the statement that facing these whites, we would have gotten more if we had our philosophy intact, because we would have known that, okay, they crushed me, but the children see, and they'll be different because they saw how I dealt with it. You see, the children will be different because they see how I dealt with it. And then they will adjust, and then their children will be different. You see,
they will adjust.
The standard was set, so you hadn't lost anything. This is what Kim and understand. They were passing down through generations something of an example that they set. And they said you never die. You literally never die, because you live in the next person or the next generation that understood what you did. Your name, knew what you did. And so we're passing down generational information by our actions, the standard that we set. And most people don't get that you just can't go through life groveling, crawling around, trying to get a payoff, and not understand that the children are seeing that. You see? And even though you didn't get rich from what you did, you got rich in them. Because you set a standard in them that they would not fall away from. I can say this in the end. These young people who have been calling us and getting in touch with us saying, I want to work on this project, I want to do this, that comes from us being, standing tall. Saying, well, okay, we see what they're doing, but that's not going to solve our problem. And they know it. So what's going to solve our problem? Well, read this and understand this and then tell me what you think. They're only coming because they see we're thinking about it in a way that's healthy, which is, if we're wrong, admit it. If someone has more information, correct it. If someone has advice, take it in consideration. You don't have to use it, but take it in consideration. Face people squarely, even the ones who are negative on this. These Nazis, they're going to try to kill every last one of us. Okay? But face the fact that you know that's coming. And again, remember my history, which is when somebody tells you what they're going to do, you should be prepared overly. And that's what I'm trying to get across here. So no, the statement you made about the essence of living stuff is not abstract. It's a living thing, and that's what they had understood that, and that's why it was so important to leave food for people. It's a living thing. They had understood it that well. But that point is very clear. We actually synthesize information from our environment, from any situation that we're in, and then we move forward to actually build on it, and that's what's been done.
Okay. This is more of an opinion question than anything else.
You give me opinion.
Well, I was going to ask you for your opinion. Philosophically speaking, do we as African people have free will, or are we subject to the dilemma of determinism?
Well, it depends on the people who allow themselves to be subject to the dilemma of determinism. Free will is going into situations and knowing that however the thing turns out, that you made that decision. You made it, irrespective of the decision. Irrespective of the situation. Let me give you an example of it. Harriet Tubman, each time she went in, she knew that that could be a time that they called her and did what they were going to do, which is execute her in the worst of ways. But she went in anyway. Well, 1 million black folk could have seen that and said, I'm not going to take that chance. You see, someone could say, okay, the 1 million black people would be the determinism because they did the right thing, because they didn't do it. She did it.
She did it, yeah.
But the free will allowed her to say, I need our people free, and this is my contribution. You see?
Yeah.
And my free will tells me this is my contribution. I know I've taken heat for this. I know that in the final analysis, there are difficulties moving through life for this. But my free will said, we got to get it out. And if we can get it in one young person's hand, or even the elder who, like you all, have heart and integrity, then it will get to somebody else. It's not as simple as a message in the bottle type stuff, but it's close. It's saying you can't carry this to your grave.
Right.
You can't keep doing that out of cowardice.
Right.
You see so many of our folk in intelligence in the university system and out there have all this knowledge and they carry it to their grave, drawing a check and a pension. They're scared to put that in jeopardy. And so that goes to their grave. These are architects who could be summing up Kemet's architectural history and setting a whole path for these young people. They take it to their grave. These are engineers and biologists who take this to their grave, cowardly taking it to their grave. They made a decision. So you have free will, but you allow a situation to confuse you into thinking that there's a determinism that makes you say, oh, no, I'm not doing what Harriet did.
Right.
I ain't doing that. I want to be free, but I don't want to be that free. I'm not going to put myself in that situation.
It kind of reminds me of, I was talking to somebody earlier today. You know, I have a background in music. I used to sing in a group. I sang in 2 different groups. And we were discussing the music industry and how it operates. And it reminds me of the situation how different singing groups, you know, when new groups come in or new acts come in, they don't tell them the legal aspects. And you wonder why they don't pass that information on so that those folks who come in have to keep reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
You know, like an example would be like there was this old singing group, you may not remember, but I know we all enough to remember the Moments. The Moments did not own the rights to their name. So at some point when they wanted to leave the record industry, that record company and go to another company, that name belonged to their company. So they had to actually reinvent themselves as Ray Goodman and Brown. When I finally did get an offer, I only got one offer, and that was by the time I became a solo artist. I left the group. And the guy offered me a 2-year contract with 4 one-year options. I'm just showing you. And I didn't know any, this was some of the stuff that I didn't know that I should have known, because by the time I got this offer, I was 32 years old. I had been toiling in this thing at that point 16 years. And that's something that people should have told me. So fortunately, I took the contract that he offered me to an attorney who explained to me what it was, and I refused to sign it because what he wanted me to do was sign over the rights to my name. I was using my name is Olatunji. I was using the name Tunji as a short version. I was going to have to sign up all rights and everything to that name to him for 2 years. Now, like I said, the contract was for 2 years with 4 one-year options. His options. At the end of the contract, now remember, I ain't getting none of it. So that means if y'all come to see me sing and bought a shirt with my face on it, I ain't getting none.
Yeah.
Anything that was relative to that, I wasn't getting any. I wouldn't have gotten anything. I'm just using that as an example,
It's good.
as how people take stuff to their grave or keep stuff that they need to be sharing. I'm looking at all these different famous acts that I actually love, singing groups and such, who don't tell the next generation.
Yeah.
You know, I looked at I was talking to somebody. I said the Jackson 5 was another example. When they got ready to leave Motown owned the name Jackson 5. They couldn't use it, so they had to change the name to the Jacksons. You know, so you see these kinds of, the same thing happened with Prince. When Prince got ready to do something, at a certain point, he couldn't use his name. So he had to use the symbol that he came up with and said the act formerly known as Prince. He couldn't even use the name Prince. And what we see is that as these people start to discover certain things, if they have a certain body of work, we're seeing that the industry kills them.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, for all of the negatives that we can say about him, the one thing he was intelligent enough to do was to take the music industry and understand the business aspect to such a degree that by the time he died, he owned 50% of Sony's publishing rights. He has, I have a stack of all of the acts that he had. He was getting, every time they put out, every time that song was released on the recording, he was getting 50% of it being published. And so when he got ready, when he died, he only had one album he needed to do, and he was getting ready to leave Sony. Now he would have still owned that. So imagine him taking all of that to a competitor. So I'm just using that as an example of how we don't pass on what we need to the next generation.
That's right. It's not done properly.
You know, it's not being done.
It's not been done properly, and that's you highlighted what I meant.
Yeah.
We got to do better.
We got to do better.
Can't go through life like this. You know, set up apprenticeship programs. Do something, but just don't take it to your grave. All this work.
Yeah, we have to be at not only the example, but we have to raise the bar, stay at the higher part of the bar, because as so-called conscientious people, we can't afford to be jealous.
No.
We shouldn't be jealous of other people and withholding information.
We're supposed to be encouraging.
Being basically selfish.
Right. You're supposed to be encouraging them and pumping them up.
Being greedy because I want mine. You get yours because I got mine. All these things, you would not think that would be characteristic of a person who was supposed to be enlightened. So when you look at KA, this conversation is about KA, you're enlightening our community with the methodology.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And as a person with the KA, as an enlightened person,
and functioning under
Ma'at, we do not lower ourselves to the animalistic traits and characteristics of this depraved culture of the European, or even of the Arab, now even of the Asian.
Yeah, the Asian.
You know, so it's important that we draw that point home. You know what I mean? This book will give you the answer that you need, but we're putting the message out there. As individuals, we have to raise the bar for ourselves
and live it,
and live the higher quality, a higher moral quality of life. That's what we have to do.
And how we deal with each other.
This is our message. Raise your level, your moral level, and quality of life.
Yes.
We should, I look at different, when I see some of these folks who are supposed to be enlightened, and then I watch how they express themselves and how they're supposedly giving whatever information they think they have to people. And they're cursing and they're acting like ghetto snipes, for use of a better term. They just, and you're sitting back saying, what you're talking about had a high moral standard to it. Why aren't you manifesting that? I like to use the word that this information is supposed to be transformative. It's supposed to transform us from what we were to what we can become. And if it's not doing that, then you need to ask yourself individually, And we also need to ask ourselves collectively. Then what are you get? Why are you learning it?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing it? That's the question. Because we're supposed to be becoming better and laying the example for the next generation of how they need to do what they need
Yes.
to do.
That's what you see here.
And that's what this work is doing.
That's right. As the example that's being set, I hope folk get an encyclopedic understanding of history. I hope they don't fear math and science. I hope they appreciate the spirit in all of its forms. Listen to people, respect them, but in the final analysis, make certain that we have our free will intact.
Exactly.
Because Harriet Tubman had free will.
Exactly.
She didn't allow the determinism of the situation of fear to get in the way of her making a decision that she was not going to get much out of.
Right.
So, next question, and this is a pretty interesting question. Does knowledge have intrinsic value, or does it need to have a practical use to have value?
Yeah, people get those elements confused. I mean, people who in different classes get that confused because people who are sitting around rich from taking advantage of other populations, they can say it just intrinsic value, knowledge for knowledge's sake is what you're saying. But I don't see it in that manner. And I see that the foundation of knowledge started off with a practical element to it, foundation. And see, when you start talking about Greek science, they didn't have any science. You have Greek ideology that we produced in practice. That was the science.
Sure.
See, when they talk about geometry, they didn't build the pyramids.
Nope.
They talk about trigonometry, they didn't build a pyramid. They talk about Pythagoras theorems, these angles, they didn't build any of that. We built it.
Right.
So they're actually summing up what we wrote and what we built. So it was built for practical purposes in the final analysis as a foundational thing. And in history, that's how it is. What they then did was separate the thought matter from the practice. And most of us get confused. Somebody ends up with a big book on a car. They didn't make the car, but they got the book on it. You think they know how to make the car.
Right.
They didn't make the car.
Right.
Greece didn't make the car.
Right. Exactly.
Kemet made it, is standing there, and because most of our people, and again, the engineers, the black engineers should have cleaned this up decades ago.
Right.
But cowardice.
Yeah.
They know that you first have to have the applied practice before you end up with the formula.
Right.
You can come up with a formula, but how do you know it works?
Right. You got to apply it.
You got to apply
You got
it.
to put it in the
You got to prove it. And if you didn't approve it, Greece coming up with tens of thousands of scientific conclusions that they never proved, you clearly they got it from someone who did.
That's right.
Right.
You see, and so an engineer would know that.
Right.
So in the separation from thought matter and practice, meaning the practice first, the thought matter is the summation of it. Sometimes it gets floating out there for people who have time in life to just pontificate and talk. Yeah, they can say just knowledge for knowledge's sake.
Right.
But for those of us who know that almost everything that we do, we have to find a way to apply it to see if it works.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going with the application part.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a very impressive answer. So next question is, and this is, I would say this is more opinionated, of course, but is a life that focuses on avoiding pain and seeking out pleasure a good and worthwhile life? Why or why not?
Well, with the ancients, our ancient in Kemet, it certainly was not the basis for what many of the writings that I have seen, meaning living life just for beauty of feeling was not at the core of our existence. But again, for different people, you have different answers. I remember reading something that's from Kemet that said, eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow you die.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, that has a lot in there,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously everyone's going to die.
Right.
But he could have been saying, make the best of the period that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Every situation you're in, draw something positive from it, which I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Even the tough situations, once I begin to appreciate Ka, or at least appreciate the unity of opposites, you then draw from the situations you're in, the best you can draw from it. If you're in a prison, draw the best you can draw from that. It gives you some time to do some work, do the work while you're in there.
Right.
And again, we've got to teach young people that. So yeah, I would close with that, saying that it's to each his own on that question. It's not any standard firm answer on that. It could go either way.
Well, so then, to know thyself being an ancient concept going back much further than Socrates, and is at the root of much of philosophy. With that in mind, what are the most important things to learn about oneself, or is all self-knowledge equal?
Yeah, I see people walking around talking about no self with Arab names, black people, European names.
Uh-huh.
I see folk running around talking about no self. You got to know yourself, and they crawling around with other people's religions, walking around with other people's cultures, and they talk about no self. The first thing is to look internally, which was taught to every initiate going through Kemet schools, to appreciate nature that's around you and inside of you. And from that appreciation, you put yourself in a position to then branch out and move into a way that you could look at other people. So your first mirror was yourself.
Right.
And what has happened in our situation is we're not deeply looking at ourselves, because we wouldn't be walking around telling somebody to know theyself or know thyself, and we're running around with other people's stuff, or at least claiming other people's stuff. And this is what we're doing. And I'm not talking about the general movement, because 90%, 95% of us are doing that as a standard procedure. But I'm talking about even the African-centered are saying no self, and they're still caught up in the middle of other people's stuff. So no, we have to really start with integrity. If you ask me what was at the foundation of it, integrity is being honest with yourself. You admitting certain things that you're not doing and why you're not doing it. I mean, you say, okay, my name is this. Maybe I don't want to change it now because I'm at a job that I think I'll lose that job if I don't change. They'll be honest about that. Okay, so that you know that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, but you will change when you get another chance to change, when you get a chance to do it. But we're not honest. We'll actually defend things that we know aren't right and continue to do them. And then when you do that, you have the children growing up seeing you doing that, being hypocritical. And so then they're not be able to make the transitions that they should make. So no, we have to have integrity in all that we do. And as I've seen it before, that's not been with all these churches and mosques on the corner, you would think we'd have more.
Something I emphasize all the time when I'm speaking. Is there an inherent order in nature, or is it all chaos and chance?
Yeah, it's both. I think Kemet understood all of that. It's both. And the chaos is in the transition, metamorphosis, transformation stages. You know, when something is going through its change, it's moving in ways that you don't know it's moving. You don't know where it's going to end up to be. The same, you know, when that sperm meets the egg, you don't know what's that going to be. Right. You know, give it a year, you start seeing, oh, that's what that's going to be. And then, you know, the same thing with a child growing up into an adult. You see all this back and forth. If you watch some children, and you see, okay, I don't know how that boy is going to turn out. I don't know how that girl is going to turn out. And they're going through this. But at some point, there's order. Out of that chaos came order. So I'm saying it's both. That it's a unity and opposites, depending on the phases and stages of the process that you're studying. Just think about these whites coming over here. They came over on boats running from Europe. Feudalism was dead. It was collapsed. And they got on boats. They landed, 103 of them, Jamestown, Virginia. They were a cell form. The whole Americas had a different population. The whites, from 103 people in 1609, end up now being almost 300 million, and the Chechemicans or the Indians barely 2 or 3 million. What happened? You see, so out of this order for this Indian population was immense disorder when the Europeans got here and built up a military force and disease force, biological warfare force, in order to kill these people, round them up and put them on reservations. Just this extreme chaos for the population that's being attacked. But the whites had it in order, a murderous order. And then a murderous order of bringing us over here, working us to death. But for us, it's extreme chaos. Just destroying our culture, destroying our lives, our very being crushed, raping us daily, snatching our children and selling them. Just rotten people. And yet and still, for them, this was an order. This was democracy. You see? For us, an intense chaos and disorder. So you have a unity of opposites there.
Okay, very good, very good. So we almost at the end of this interview. I know we've asked you this before, but as you keep producing work, we feel a need to ask you this again, and this one is probably going to make you sweat the most. What book is your most gratifying work to date? Here come the sweat.
Yeah, that would be really hard because we worked as a team on all of them. I mean, the last one is really more me, it's KA. So if it was a personal one, it would be KA. But for the group, Maat is the best one. Is the one that I would turn over to anybody. I mean, anybody could get Maat and get something out of that. I mean, even the people who hate us. They were just like, yeah, you right on that, or they right on that. But for me personally, this one that lays in place philosophy, theory, method, strategy, tactic, though it's a long read, you're not going to get it done over a 6-month period or even a year in order to digest it. It's the one that I think will have the most impact on young people getting themselves organized. But Maat for our group is the best one we put forward to people, Maat. Because the other ones are source books, and Bach is really a process book. I mean, folk are going to take years to figure it out, and I don't think most people are going to figure it out until the thing hits them. You see, when the hurricane shows up, say, damn, why didn't we build buildings that were hurricane resistant and stuff? You see, that's when they're going to say, oh, I got to go to that. We know that. I got to go to that. Okay, how did we get to this point? Then we show them how you got to this point. You know, how do you get to a point where Amazon stores don't need checkout counters? You just go in, you got your card, you put your stuff in there, and you walk right out. And what do you think that does to the service industry? What do you think other companies are going to have to do? What do you think they're going to have to do?
They're going to do the same.
They got to do the same thing.
They got to compete.
What do you think they have to do when all the farming instruments are now robotized and they're actually carrying out their farm work, picking oranges? I mean, planting them all the way to picking the oranges, apples, strawberries, everything with robots. What do you think is going to happen? Why do you think they're working so hard to put them Hispanics out now? Because they don't need them in those areas that they brought them in for. You see, even the construction areas, when you have robots laying the bricks, you don't even need the bricklayers anymore. And so they're putting them out because of this. They know what they're doing. And we don't know. We don't understand that process. We think it's something else. But no, it's a fundamental way that you have to begin to appreciate things. So no, that's Bach. But the two I said was the one that's personally, I know what that's going to have an effect. It's going to take some time. But Maat for our group was and is the foundational book, and really the best one we have produced. We argue that.
So, last question, and then we'll sum up the interview, is which book can children gain the most benefit from? What book can families read together and benefit from?
Yeah, well, I think the one that really is going to help children the most is African time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the one, even though it's, you know, it's on a higher level. We tried to keep it in the area of a 10th grader to like the first 2 years in college, something like that.
Sure.
That's the area that is written in. We could have wrote it on another level. The point of the matter is we tried to see who would be the target for that reading level. So 8th, 9th, 10th, right around in there to them. So yeah, that will help them because a foundation has to be laid. And, you know, a lot of stuff is mystical. You hear people talking about civilization started in Mesopotamia, and you just shake your head. Why? How could that happen when the Africans are living along the Nile the whole time?
Sure.
You know, what's going on there? Why would you be so stupid as to say something like that? They had to go there and do something? No, they were there in Kemet building right there. Even the discussion around when the civilization started. You let these stupid white people make us stupid. They say civilization in Kemet started in 331 when Menes unified. No, that's when the Federation started. The only federation in human history in ancient times, that's when that started.
Right.
You had Upper and Lower Kemet. These were two nations. These were two kingdoms, excuse me. What is a kingdom but civilization? So that you let these whites do this.
Right.
And then you go around, then we go around repeating it, parroting it, stupid, arguing it, talking about dynasties. And they found almost 15 to 20 kings that were in that area before the dynasty started. So why aren't those in there?
Right.
Just, we let them get away with this. The chronology they set up. They purposely set it up. Robin Walker did the best work, in my view, in When We Ruled, to explain these 6 different chronologies. And all the blacks I see running around here use the one that the shortest one, because the whites say that's the one. And so you have all these different chronologies they're making up out of their head, and we're using them.
I will also say that for people who are listening, when you do get Robert Walker's book, make sure you get the workbook,
the study guide
that accompanies that study guide. Make sure you get that study guide, because that's going to bring everything right into pristine focus for you.
That's right.
That's what I have. I got the book, but I don't have the study guide.
Yeah, he did good work. And see, when people do good work, you see it just get pushed under the rug. This whole chronology, and I see it on Facebook, people putting numbers up there. I'm just like, where did you get that from? You know, why would you use that? 3,100, when clearly it was 3,300. But that was just for the Federation. If you got a civilization that's in existence for 2,000 years before that, that's when you start the civilization. But yet and still we're running around with this and then debating it. So you don't see me.
No.
You never see me out there with them, because I'm not going to waste my time. Because logic comes from a summary of history. And a summary of history is at the foundation of philosophy. You don't get philosophy in each area if you don't know the history of each area. My like I said, my appreciation for this was working in that library. I'm looking at every area of their work that's on the library shelf, and I'm supposedly moving it, but I'm reading it. So you get a history of it. And you see that history to sum up a philosophy from it. And then the theories that come out of that. And then from that, your strategy and your tactics that were used in each moment. And then you begin to make a decision on how you're going to build yours. You know, I always use this little quote, this little Facebook thing about Pluto. You know, you laugh about it. Yeah, just to get people thinking. Yeah, you know, you're mad at the whites for what they did to you. You know, Pluto is in the news now. They say they went by there, and sometimes it's a planet, and sometimes it's not a planet.
Planetoid.
Whatever they want to call it. But you could go there. But if you went there, you would have to take everything that you have here that you've learned there. And what we've learned is with Christians, Muslims, Judaism stuff, we've learned their language. We got their languages. We speak in French, Spanish, you know, because they enslaved us. We're running around with their culture. We have their economic system. We don't have an economic system of our own no more. We have theirs.
Right.
And we're going to use this predatory system and not understand that we'll have to be the black face to it when we set it up for ourselves.
Yeah.
And yet we still want to do it. Same political system. We're using their, we use their social structure system.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's intact because we have not made a decision to return to our own source.
Right.
You see, and that's what we're battling for now. How do we get young people to return to their own source and discuss from there, not this other stuff, which is useless.
Exactly.
So yeah, I made that point.
Exactly.
I brought this here because I knew we was going to get on this point about culture and why we have that so ingrained as part of our psyches. So when you go to Pluto, you're going to bring all this garbage and stuff with you.
Right.
But from this book, which is a very good book, The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa, by John Alabeza Azuma.
Yes. That's a great
I read a quick
book.
thing from it. The route from the interior of Africa through Lake Tanganyika to the coast was littered with skeletons as a result of slaves dying from exhaustion, hunger, or the brutality of their couriers, sometimes still yoked together. You talk about skeletons now, still yoked together.
They just left them.
Just left them. Deaths during the journeys were so numerous that it has been estimated that every slave who reached the coast in Zanzibar, 4 or 5 lives were lost in transit for every one.
Wow.
Yes.
An Arab slave dealer by the name of Saeed bin Habib is reported in 1882 to have admitted that out of 300 slaves he acquired from the interior, only 50 reached the coast alive.
Wow.
David Livingstone observed that if the slaughter committed during the raids is taken into account in addition to the deaths along the routes, then the price of every single slave who arrived in Zanzibar would be about 10 lives.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if every slave that came to the coast of Zanzibar, there were 10 lives that were lost.
That's right.
So this tells you that, number one, there is no spiritual center.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number two, we have to understand that the Europeans learned their lessons well from these same people.
They did.
So the trans-Saharan slave trade, or we say prisoner exchange, was the exact. Although that was very brutal, they did eunuchs cut penises off and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Europeans were brutal, but they weren't that brutal. But they learned their lessons. Well, they did have eunuchs. They did have eunuchs, and they had a few here and there, but not on a mass scale
Like they
as the Arabs did.
Yeah.
We have to know that in order for us to get what is worthy, the information that's so worthy out of this book, we have to know why we are where we are.
That's right. That's right.
Okay?
Yes. Right.
We have to bring this picture back to you
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
for you to appreciate what these books are about.
Yeah.
We forget we're comfortable.
We did.
Yeah.
We're comfortable.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And our ignorance of this period in our history is one of the problems, because I always remember what Chancellor Williams said when he talked about we jumped from the Christian frying pan into the Arab Muslim fire. And so, because we thought that somehow, I think a lot of this is because of Malcolm to some. I'm not blaming Malcolm.
No.
But I'm saying that Malcolm X,
He didn't know for a while.
Right, his conversion to
realize
Islam. A lot of us, as we ran from Christianity, ran to Islam because we thought that was going to give us the answer. I'm certain, given the nature of the type of man that Malcolm X was and how studious he was, that he would have figured it out.
He would have. Yeah.
That he would have figured it out.
He was just starting to.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I started out in a similar journey based on what I saw with Malcolm. I first converted to Islam, and I was like, I stopped. Caught myself, readjusted as I began to study
It's like power breaks right there, bro.
Right, power breaks. As I started to study African history and saw the history and what they were teaching me in the religion, they weren't matched. They weren't matching up together.
Never mentioned.
You know, they weren't matching up together. This was the fairy tale, and here were the facts. This is how this religion was being implemented against my people. And as I saw that, I could not practice that religion anymore. I had to give it up.
Well, I'm glad I wouldn't be able to sit up in this room with you. I don't have the time with people who are rotten to the core,
Right.
because they can't get rid of something
Right.
that they took in early on. I don't have the time. I see them, they come in, I move on, because I know you're not going to get anything out of that.
It goes to what is an enlightened soul.
Yeah.
An enlightened soul can be a surface type of enlightenment. You know, the look good enlightenment. You know, you put the garb on.
Right.
You know, you put the
Right.
Khufu on.
Right.
You know, you put the cross on your neck. You know, you're not enlightened.
Well, it goes to
You're not
also
enlightened.
what Tdka said earlier when he talked about integrity. See, because when you have integrity and honesty, as he said, you turn that mirror around and you're honest about yourself.
That's right.
So you're honest about what you see, because I guess for the, you know, when I first converted to Islam in 1974, one of the things that I swore to myself was that I was in the search for truth. Most of those that I were encountering who were practicing the religion, they were in the search for a deeper understanding of Islam. See, and so there's nothing deep about it. It's all it is you study it. It's right there. It's very easy to understand. Once you understand it, then you know what it is.
But,
now.
yeah, and you had a period. You had that period. There's an excuse. There's no excuse now.
No, the
See,
information
see,
is there.
there's no excuse
And
now.
for me, I was already clear within 4 to 5 years of practicing Islam. Cause see, the thing is, when I went into Islam, I was studying African history at the very same time. That's the difference.
You know, you get both
They-
sides.
So and then when I got to that fork in the road, I knew which road to take. They don't have that. They're studying Arab history, wanting to be Arab just as bad as the black Christian wants to be white.
Yeah, and
It's
you
the
can't do
same
anything
thing.
with them. This is what I was trying to
Same
explain
thing.
to you. There's no need to even. I've learned, this is just
Right.
if this were a philosophy, I would tell you this. People who have gone through processes and know when you're telling them the facts and the evidence, and still they're still in it, you cannot work with them.
No, you gotta leave them alone.
Let me say that again.
Yeah.
People who know evidence is in front of them, facts are in front of them, verifiable evidence and facts, and they still are part of that stuff, you can't waste time with them.
Sure.
Get them out of the room.
Right.
Get them out. Christian, get them out of there.
Right.
Because it's not going to go anywhere. As you asked me about teams before, that's what I meant.
Right.
That there are going to be people on that boat rowing, and that's who you want. You're going to prune the ones who are sitting there arguing because they're trying to figure out what they want to do. But then if they're in there drilling holes in the boat,
Get them out the boat.
get them off the boat. And those people are going to be drilling holes in the boat.
Right.
Because that fairy tale they done got, they're saying they're getting something out of that.
Right.
You see, you don't give them the belief that they got this 72 virgins waiting on them.
Right.
You don't believe, milk and honey. You know,
Right.
you don't give them that.
No.
Right.
No, only the people who are conquering them, who have control, give them that.
Right. Right.
Whites have all this resource and money. That gives them that. The Arabs have stolen all our stuff and taken it. That gives them the vision that you can have your 72 virgins
Yeah.
and lay around with 5-year-old girls and get away with it because you're a prophet. 9-year-old girls. And get away with it because you're a prophet.
Right.
And so it's okay for you to be rotten with their stuff. But with us, we can't have that in our midst.
No.
Right.
And so never see me wasting time around people who are immoral.
Right.
I won't waste time. I'll be the first one gone.
Right.
I see it. I see the hole. I see, okay, they're drilling holes in that boat. I see who drilled it, and they're out of there.
Right.
Right.
You see? Because we're not sinking with a bunch of rotten people.
To add something to that, the veggie back kind of off what Olatunji said, where he says there's nothing in particular that we're talking about Islam. I would sum this up with a lot of the Western religion in its totality. But when he said there's nothing deep about it, and that's very true, growing up in Philadelphia is a very heavy Islamic town.
Very
heavy.
And when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, you would see people converting to Islam because of the dress and to feel like they're a part of something. You feel like they're a part of a brotherhood. It's almost like a fraternity, so to speak. And when I think about that, I think about the conditions of our people, where our people just want to, we've been so oppressed that now we just want to feel like we're a part of something. Part of something. So we go to these religions, and you see brothers that go into the prison system, they come out, and now they're Muslim because, you know, the guys in there might have certain social statuses, they might have had certain connections, so it's like, okay, well, I'm going to convert to Islam just so I can, you know, be a part of what they're a part of. So we've been brainwashed into feeling like to be a part of something that we got to take on these religions and these things with really no substance. And even with our females, I've heard females say, oh, well, if I convert to Islam, you know, I'll find me a good man and I'll get married, which they're under the belief that they can't find a good man and won't be married unless they find a Muslim man, you know, or find a Christian man. And those things are not true. So we've been brainwashed, and it's very sad to see. But just veggie backing off of, when we talk about raising the bar, we have to raise the bar and show people that we don't need these constructs of a religion to conduct ourselves morally, to give philosophy to our children, and to not communicate with each other with the topic of discussion recently has been egotism. And we're talking about the whole entire community. I would go as far, let's just say the whole entire black race. So we have to set this bar. And once again, I just want to say that we are appreciative of these type of works. These type of works are much needed. And we hope that people read these books and take this information and run with it.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I did touch on a little bit about the dedication and the acknowledgement. I did acknowledge you all and others in there, but in the acknowledgement, I tell you how I got to this, which is part of our discussion, why it was necessary, why it is necessary to have a philosophy that's science-based, at least a foundation science-based, and then how to be able to respect the spiritual debates that people are having, but also appreciate that there's a practical foundation to all of this. You see, you've got to have firm feet when you stand up. You know, when you talk about Maat, you can't be up here. No. You got to be down with what you do. You know, you just brought your son a tricycle, and he's 42 years old. Where have you been in his life? He doesn't need a tricycle now. It's late. You see, what did you do for the 41 years? That's Maat. Maat is going to ask you that question. Okay, why are you out here cursing on every turn when you're presenting a lecture about our moral history?
Exactly.
What are how are you out slandering people's names with these cursing people out when you're presenting a moral presentation of our history? You see, Maat is going to ask you that. You know, why didn't you saw the person didn't have resources you had? Why didn't you give him some? That's what Maat is going to ask you that. These are practical questions, and that's the balance that you have. It's not you sitting in a room, you know, up in the air somewhere. It's what you did in life. We're judged on what we did. And that's what people remember. That's what the children take with them. Oh, they did this, and no. We didn't get no resources from anybody. We got some help from one person who helped us out, one group, Ushaka, and
Akua.
Yeah, and Akua. They walked in. They're the ones who helped us get the ability to print them all at one time. About a year ago, they did that. They did that.
But I have his work, by the way. Ushaka.
Yeah, just
I have his work,
just
yeah.
good people.
Yeah.
And so you see people who, when I brought up elders who did not, these are elders who
did.
stepped in there
Right.
and called me
Yeah.
and said, you know, you need help with this. Yeah, we don't have it. We've been paying out of pocket. But having said that, the vast majority of us don't do right by each other.
Right.
That's my eye.
Right.
And then obviously I help them.
Right.
And so it means in substance that we have to have a situation where reciprocity is at core of our activity.
Absolutely.
And we haven't had that.
Absolutely.
And so we end up with these situations where people are going to their grave hating each other, when in fact, all we had to do was face the situation that we were in and have reciprocity, and it will turn out well, even if we made a mistake the first time.
That's right.
You see, we came back with reciprocity
Right.
to balance
Right.
that out in practice.
Right.
Ma'at is balance in practice. Yeah.
No doubt.
So,
So this has been a very good conversation, and once again, we're very appreciative of Dr. Tdka. We're very appreciative of him meeting with us today and discussing his latest work. We want everyone to go out and purchase his latest work as well as his other works.
KA².
Yara and Neb and Tdka Kilimanjaro. And we give special thanks to his elder, Haru.
Tdka Haru.
yeah.
Tdka Haru.
Yes. Yes.
Late ancestor in University of UKMT Press. So, Tdka, tell them the website which they can purchase.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. So you just type in UKMT and on Facebook, and it comes up and it takes you right to the website.
Okay, we'll be sure to throw that in there.
Mhm.
So when people are viewing it, it should come across their screen.
Yes.
So once again, my name is Khufu Akhu Mentuhotep. I am co-founder of Raising Awareness Group. This is Mkuu, Mzee.
Yeah.
Olatunji and Mwamba.
Yeah, we have one more. We have one more book coming out.
Oh, okay. Wait.
Yeah, we have Art of Research.
Okay.
And, you know,
Yeah.
the one that
but-
you do in your
yeah.
sleep. But
Right.
this is another big one. So they'll end our big book process. But it's a research book that shows about 20 different research designs. You know, most people are trapped with one of them. Yeah. And so we're trying to make certain they see that there are a lot of different ways to look at things, a lot of different angles. And the research design that you use dictates the conclusion you're going to get. You see, this is why the whites end up with all these rotten conclusions.
Yeah.
They use sampling in a certain way to fool you.
Right.
You know, it's like just what they did with this last study in Kemet with the DNA, talking about.
Right. Oh yeah. Trying to say they were what do you call them? Middle Easterners? Or,
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
they call them Mediterranean.
Yeah,
types,
yeah.
that's
So,
what they call them.
yeah. See, and so they're so rotten that, and we're not up to speed, that they use a research design that got them the results that they
Right.
wanted to get,
That they
which
wanted.
means in substance, instead of sampling the 42 nomes, meaning the
Right.
42 states,
Right. They
people
wanted
who died over time,
Right.
getting 42 different samples from each state in Kemet, and then doing a DNA analysis,
Right.
they went for where the Arabs came in.
Right
Right.
there.
In 700
Right.
BC,
Right.
not 3000 BC
Right.
when the thing
Exactly.
was being built,
Exactly.
but 700 BC when the Arabs were coming, when these
700
Semitic populations were
Yeah.
coming in.
Yeah.
And then they used those 3 out of 91,
Right.
had a sample of 91, used only 3 to draw a conclusion. And our dumb behind around here promoting that. I saw some dumb folk putting that up, posting it. See what? See? These are black folk doing this stupid stuff. And I'm saying, okay, this is because they have no concept of research designs and statistics. They have zero. And in our community, you have that problem.
Right.
You know, stop posting stuff someone presented, their conclusion, without understanding how they got to it.
Right.
What method they used to get to it. What was the sample? How did they sample? What was the decision on the sample?
Sure.
And then how you then went about using the sample.
Exactly.
They never understand all of that. And so we end up with a DNA to study with some conclusions about three bodies that came in as interlopers populations that did nothing but assimilate and acculturate into a nation. See, Kemet was a nation. It had different, just like this is a nation. It has black people, it has white people, it has a few Arabs, and Mexicans. You know, it's a nation. And so if you just go sample the white people, they make it look like nobody else was here. Exactly. That's what they did. Right. They go sample the ones who are coming in, robbing and ravaging, who dressing up like us and have learned the language, put on the clothes, and then say those are the ones who were there 3,000 years earlier. And we're dumb enough to be posting that kind of stuff online. So we need our method. So that book will be out the end of February, early March. I'm still, and this is one you do in your sleep, but it still has to be worked out. The format, the layout, and then the month of edits for spelling and grammar. So we still got that to go.
That's good. That's good.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
All right. So once again, my name is Khufu Akhu Mentuhotep, and we want to thank Tdka Kilimanjaro for his time here today. And I'm the co-founder of Raising Awareness Group, as I already said, with my other co-founder, Mkuu, Mzee, and Olatunji Mwamba. And we just want to wish everyone Mwamba.
Yeah, get it right.
Yeah, don't let him slap your side back of your head.
A couple lashings. It's been a very long conversation.
Yes.
So we want to wish everyone much life, prosperity, and health, and Shimhim Hotep.
Shimhim Hotep.
Shimhim Hotep.
All right.